Part 1. You never really forget the sound of betrayal. It doesn't crash in with alarms, it comes fast, razor-sharp, like glass slicing somewhere deep inside. That day looked normal. I was in the kitchen, only half listening to the radio, spinning a spoon through coffee as sunlight stretched over the counter. I just returned from the store, bread and almond milk for Tessa, her favorite. Humming, lost in thought, I had no clue life was about to split in two. The front door creaked open. I figured it was Tessa's sister, Alina, always barged in without warning, acting like she had keys to the place. Most times, she barely glanced at me, which suited me fine. But today, she moved differently, jittery, eyes wide, tension clinging to her. Tessa followed, her face drawn tight, like she'd just been handed terrible news. I turned around, coffee still in hand, ready to say good morning. Before I could speak, Alina blurted out, "Adrian got me pregnant." 7 words. Her voice trembled, her lips shook, like some bad rehearsal. I froze. The room went silent, my jaw hung open. Not out of guilt, just shock. Was this a prank? Tessa didn't ask for the truth. Didn't even look at me. Her face curled up with disgust. Then crack, her hand slammed across my cheek, snapping my head sideways. My mug slipped and shattered on the tiles. I just stood there, stunned, not from the pain, but from the fact that my wife had turned into someone I didn't recognize, all fire and venom. I croaked, "Tessa, what the hell?" But her brothers stormed in before I could finish. Jared and Marco, both built like bouncers, grabbed my arms and yanked me through the house. I was barefoot, in an old t-shirt, still trying to piece things together. "Get off me," I mumbled, but they didn't care. Outside, Jared slugged me in the gut. Marco shoved me so hard into the fence I saw stars. I didn't fight. Neighbors peeked from windows. Across the street, someone filmed. Jared spat at my feet. "You sick freak," he yelled. Shame, not mine, stuck in my throat. They left me there, bruised and humiliated. Tessa just stood in the doorway, arms crossed, wedding ring flashing, her expression set, like she'd already erased me. I limped to the curb, phone buzzing nonstop, messages, missed calls from people I hadn't heard from in months. What was I supposed to say? "Hey, funny story, my wife's sister accused me of something, and now I'm the villain?" Back inside, I packed a bag. No goodbye, no explanations. They didn't want the truth, just someone to blame. You build a life thinking love equals safety, but people will turn on you the second it's easier than facing reality. I stared at the broken mug, then at my bloodied fingers. Was it from ceramic or fists? Didn't matter. I showered, wrapped a towel around my ribs, and with soap wrote on the bathroom mirror, "You didn't even ask." Then I left, no yelling, just a battered man walking out. Funny how you think you'll notice when your life collapses. Sirens, maybe, but sometimes it's just a lie and a slap. That slap didn't just sting. It erased part of me. They say truth sets you free, but that only works if someone listens. 2 days later, I checked email at a public library. Just wanted to update passwords, cancel things. Then I saw it. Notice of administrative leave. My company, cold and official. Given the serious allegations circulating, we're starting a separation process. What allegations? I hadn't told anyone except a gas station clerk and a motel manager. I checked social media. There it was, a thread, no names but easy to connect. Married man. Sister-in-law. Scandal. People weighed in. Men like this deserve to rot. It felt like my funeral, only everyone threw stones. By the 3rd day, my landlord texted, "Sorry, but you need to go. The other tenants are worried." I typed, "No problem, I'll be gone today." No arguing. When accused, nobody wants facts. They just want a side. You go invisible, quick. The local bakery, Mrs. Ingram's place, was my routine. This time, she froze, mid-pour. "We're closed," she muttered, even though others sat inside. A woman whispered, "That's him." I left without a word. 5 days in, my phone was useless. Tessa blocked me. So did her mom. Our friends, gone. Even distant acquaintances cut me off. I remembered helping Eloise move patio furniture in a heat wave. Now she called me a wolf on Facebook. Not even human. I kept silent through the slap, the beating, the shame. But reading her post broke something final. I wanted to scream, post receipts, defend myself, but there was nothing, because nothing had ever happened. But proof didn't matter. The lie was enough. A college friend called, one of the last. "Hey, not to pry, but did you?" I hung up. If someone who'd known me a decade had to ask, I didn't want to answer. I checked into a dingy motel, staring at a stained ceiling, wondering how one sentence could destroy a man. I thought of all I'd done for these people. Now I was just a shadow, a villain to hate and forget. No trial, no evidence, just whispers and a ruined name. Alina played the victim. Tessa never texted. My bank account shrank, rumors of legal trouble swirling. The real fear wasn't hatred, but disappearing completely. I stared in the mirror, hollow eyes, patchy beard. I looked guilty, even to myself. Rock bottom comes slow. To survive, you have to become someone else. I packed what was left, bought a one-way ticket. When your own name feels like a curse, it's time to vanish. I stepped into a dusty travel agency, squeezed between a laundromat and a pawn shop. A young woman behind the counter looked up, asked, "Where to?" I hesitated, my voice barely above a whisper. "Anywhere but here." Part 2. I tried to make a joke, but the truth was I didn't care where I landed. I just needed to get away, a ticket, a direction, a shot at vanishing. By sunset, I was slouched on a bus rumbling toward a town whose name I couldn't pronounce. I'd given them a fake name and clutched a duffel bag packed with my last scraps of life. 2 shirts, boots, a battered laptop, and a brown notebook crowded with sketches, half-finished thoughts, and hints of the man I used to be. The ride was endless and quiet. I sat in the back, watching city blocks dissolve into fields, then forests, then a coastline unspooling forever. Hours blurred. I barely ate or slept, just stared out the window and let my mind circle the same scenes, the slap, the lie, the way everyone had dropped me like I'd been waiting for an excuse. I wondered if, deep down, they'd all seen something in me I'd missed. Maybe I'd always been too easy to forget. That idea stayed with me longer than any bruise. By the time we reached the end of the line, the fog had thickened. The bus pulled into a gravel lot, just 2 vehicles in sight. The driver muttered, "Last stop." I stepped off. This place felt isolated. No signal, just weathered wooden buildings and a harbor where old boats rocked gently like lazy dogs. The only inn doubled as a diner. I dragged my bag down the main street, doing my best to blend in. A guy fixing nets on his porch nodded at me. I nodded back. Inside the inn, I asked about weekly rates. The woman at the desk sized me up and said, "Cash only." I paid her for 2 weeks. "Know anyone who needs help?" I asked. She pointed toward the dock. "Old Ben's always looking for hands." I found Ben across the harbor, didn't ask questions, just handed me gloves and pointed to a heap of salty, rotten nets. I got to work. For the first time in ages, nobody stared or whispered. I was just another guy with a job and sore hands. That became my routine. Wake, work, wash, sleep. No internet, no news, just fog, sweat, and silence. I gave my name as Miles. It felt lighter, detached. I didn't mention the past, and no one pressed. Some nights, I'd wander along the shoreline, letting the wind numb my face. Other nights, I'd scribble fragments into my notebook, not stories, just stray words, half-thoughts. Some days, I wanted to forget. Other days, to start fresh. People began to greet me. Nothing personal, just "Morning, Miles," or "You working the West Dock?" They didn't care about my story, only if I took my coffee with sugar or cream. The more I kept to myself, the more room I found inside my head. I started running at sunrise, a few blocks at first, then miles. The burn in my legs made sense. It was pain I chose. Eventually, I started fixing things around town, gutters, boats, whatever needed hands. June, who ran the flower shop, asked if I could update her website. I told her tech wasn't my thing, but she handed me a laptop anyway. I taught myself through late-night tutorials and somehow pulled it off. Word spread. Soon, other shopkeepers asked for help. I didn't notice the change at first, but I was no longer invisible out of shame, just anonymous by choice. Nights, I'd stand on the dock watching boats sway under a navy sky, stars pricking the water. Sometimes I'd catch myself thinking about Tessa, wondering if she missed me or regretted it. But I forced those thoughts out. What mattered was the moment, the quiet, the new identity slowly forming from the debris. The name Miles stuck, not because I chose it for any deep reason, but because it was stitched on an old work shirt I'd found in a donation bin by the pier. When people called me that, I never corrected them. Funny how a name can take root from almost nothing. By my first anniversary in that fog-bound harbor, I wasn't just scraping by, I was living. Ben, the old fisherman, suffered a stroke that winter. His daughter Clara came home to care for him, sharp, no nonsense, rarely smiled, which worked for me. One night, as we locked up, she tossed me a notebook. "You're good with numbers, right?" she asked. I shrugged. She pushed over Ben's disaster of an inventory, receipts everywhere, permits lost. I stayed up all night sorting it, then handed Clara a tidy spreadsheet in the morning. She stared, impressed. You ever think of doing more than scrubbing nets? Truth was, I had. Coding was a hobby I'd never leaned on. Back then, I was always too busy being dependable, husband, handyman, reliable employee. But now I had time to build something mine. That night, I registered a website. Not my real name, just something close enough to the person I wanted to be. Soon I was quietly building sites for local businesses, a florist, a cafe, a boat rental. No one asked questions, they just liked the work. I set up shop in a cramped workspace on the edge of town, a second-hand computer, folding desk, heater, and kettle. Nothing fancy, but it was mine. Word spread. Folks came from nearby towns needing help, an online store, a recipe blog, a place to tell their stories. I charged fairly, took payment in coffee, bread, or a smile. Nobody cared where I was from. Maybe they were polite, or maybe I'd simply become one of them. I even sponsored a local race, printed A.M. Reeves Tech on the runner's bibs. One day, I was at a council meeting, explaining a repair tracking system I'd built. When applause broke out, I realized I was being recognized in a room full of people who had no idea about the scandal that nearly destroyed me. I walked to the harbor after, took off my shoes, and let the tide touch my toes, tears blurring the sunset, relief, disbelief. I'd built something nobody could take. Still, some nights the old fears crept in. Sometimes I'd wake, heart pounding, half expecting angry voices outside. But nobody came. People don't chase ghosts. My notebook changed, too, once filled with pain, now covered in plans, checklists. Taped inside the back cover was a tiny USB drive, a recording from 6 months after I disappeared. Alina's voice, mocking, admitting, I lied about him because I wanted to ruin his life. I'd listened once. I didn't cry. I kept it, not for revenge, but as proof that I hadn't imagined the world twisting sideways. Healing wasn't dramatic. No screaming, no scenes. I just kept building, hired a couple of locals, paid them well, gave them a shot. When people asked what drove me, I said, I know what it's like to lose everything. I'm just building a life no one can erase. That was the truth. Sometimes, a stranger's voice or a glimpse of a name would bring me back. But the town moved on, and, quietly, so did I. Every wire I fixed, every boat digitized, every login reset was a piece of me returned. Not the old me, a new one. Miles. And for once, that was enough. Part 3. The only face I answered to was the one in the mirror. Before anything else, I remember the sound, a wild, frantic banging, not a polite knock, but the kind of pounding you'd make if you were desperate for air. My hands froze over my keyboard, mid-email to a client in Zurich, cursor blinking, but my mind already leaving the task behind. Rain battered the window in sheets, turning the street outside into a river. Thunder rattled the glass as I moved toward the front door. Another barrage of pounding, and then a voice, soft, shaky, unmistakably hers, barely holding together. Adrian, please. Tessa. I opened the door slow, not hesitant but wary. I'd played out this scene in my head, not often, but enough to know some part of me was still waiting for the ghost of her to reappear. There she was, rain-soaked, hair glued to her cheeks, eyes raw and searching, arms clinging to herself like she might fall apart if she let go. Please, I know you're in there, she whispered, almost pleading. I stood in the doorway, just looking at her, rain swirling around us. I noticed how small she seemed, how once I would have pulled her inside, but that man, the one who shielded her from storms, was long gone. She reached out, fingertips brushing the doorframe. I've been looking for you, she said. I only raised an eyebrow. She stepped in, hesitating, like she'd forgotten how to be here. My place was spare: a couch, desk, a few sunrise photos on the wall. Nothing that tied me to anyone but myself. She stood awkward, dripping water on the floor. How did you find me? It took a while. I hired someone. When I found out the truth, I had to. The truth. I echoed, weighing her words. Tears shimmered, but she forced them down. I just needed you to see me. I needed to explain. I turned to my desk, opened a drawer, and pulled out a small USB drive, the proof I'd never used. I know everything, I said, handing it to her. She stared at it, hands trembling. What is this? Take it. Play it. If you want to talk after, come back tomorrow. She hesitated, then took it. Without another word, she left. I heard the door shut, her shoes sloshing through puddles, the wind battering the windows. Then, just silence. I spent hours in that quiet, not checking my phone, not watching the clock. The storm faded to drizzle, and I lay on the couch, staring up, thinking about every life I'd lived since the day her brothers beat me bloody, since her silence replaced the truth. What did she expect now, a man waiting with open arms? That person was gone. I wasn't her husband anymore, not in any sense. Morning brought heavy fog, shrouding the town. I sat with coffee by the window, expecting nothing, until I spotted her, no knocking this time, just sitting on my porch bench, head bowed, hands clasped tight. She looked up when I stepped outside, her face empty of fight, only the ache left behind. I played it, she said. I nodded. She swallowed. I destroyed you. I said nothing. Adrian, I didn't know. I just believed her. I raised a hand to stop her. You don't have to say it. She blinked quickly, desperate not to break down. Do you hate me? I stared out at the calm sea. Hate takes energy I don't have. She collapsed to her knees, but I just walked past, had a client meeting to prepare for. Life had moved on. She returned the next day, standing across the road, watching my workshop. I saw her through the blinds, kept working. Her presence was just weather passing over a mountain I'd already climbed. Eventually, she came in, bell chiming softly. You're busy, she said. I'm always busy, I replied, not looking up. She lingered by my desk, voice small. I didn't sleep. I kept typing, gave her nothing. She finally spoke. I need to say something. I leaned back. I didn't know she recorded it, she whispered. Alina, I never thought she'd confess, but she did. I nodded. I knew 2 years ago. She staggered back. But you never said. I didn't. The truth wouldn't have changed what you did. Wouldn't undo the slap, or your brothers dragging me out, or the weeks I spent hiding from a world that spat on me. So I stayed quiet. I wanted to see what mattered more to you, my silence or your guilt. She covered her mouth, shaking. I would have come sooner if I'd known. No, I cut in. That's what you always miss. You didn't ask. You didn't doubt. You just chose her. She sat, face pale, tears finally falling. Alina cried. She said you hated her, said you cornered her. That was enough for you to ruin me. She broke. I was scared. I didn't know what to believe. So was I said coldly. You didn't come for the truth, I continued. You came because you lost everything. I know about the divorce, your family, what happened to your brothers. I know because I stayed quiet, and in that time the truth grew legs. She looked shattered, mouth trembling. You came for redemption, or closure, maybe forgiveness. I let silence settle. What you don't see is I forgave you a long time ago. Not for you, for me. But forgiveness isn't a welcome mat. Tessa broke down, hands over her face, just a woman buried under her own choices. Finally, she asked, do you think we could ever fix this? I shook my head, honest. No. She nodded, voice tiny. I understand. No one deserves what I went through. But you let me pay for your mistake alone. We sat, nothing left but the ache between us. She finally stood. I'll go now. Take care, I said. At the door, she looked back. I hope you find happiness. I already have, I replied. In minute. She left, no drama, no promises. Just silence, and a man who'd survived. Part 4. All I could hear was the space between us, a silence that once meant comfort, now pulled tight with regret. Tessa finally looked up, and something was missing from her eyes. Pride, hope, or maybe just the last shred of her old story. I listened to it, she said. I didn't reply. I kept listening to Alina's voice. It didn't sound like her at all, and that's what scared me most. She didn't cry, but her voice shook. The Alina on that recording wasn't who I'd remembered. Maybe that was always the real Alina, and I just hadn't wanted to see it. I stepped onto the porch, but didn't offer her a seat. I owed her nothing, just closure for myself. She was laughing, Tessa whispered, staring at her shoes. Like it was a game she'd won. I nodded, because that's exactly what it was to Alina. When Tessa finally met my eyes, I could see years of denial and self-doubt behind them. Now the lie was gone, cut out by the truth, and all that remained was scar tissue. She said you looked at her like she was nothing. She was angry you never wanted her attention, I said. She punished me for not making her feel special. Tessa closed her eyes. She hated me too, she said. It wasn't just about you, it was about both of us. What we had. Maybe, I said. But that doesn't excuse what happened after. She winced. I keep wondering, she whispered, if she'd never confessed, would I ever have realized the truth? Or would I have kept believing the version of you she painted? She already knew the answer, and so did I. You came back because the illusion collapsed, I said, not because you went looking for the truth. She didn't deny it. She looked out at the water. That day, you were holding coffee, looking so confused, but all I saw was a problem to fix. I watched the sunlight on the dock. What hurts about betrayal isn't just the lie, it's how fast someone decides you're guilty. That speed destroys you. She nodded, tears streaking down but making no move to wipe them away. I ruined you, she whispered. I let her words hang there. Sometimes people need to feel the weight of what they've done. She continued. I told myself maybe it wasn't so bad. But hearing her, so proud, shattered every excuse I had. She stood slowly. I'm not here to fix anything. I know I can't. I just needed you to see that I know now. I looked at her and saw not the woman I'd loved, but a stranger, burned by what she'd done, maybe finally honest. There's nothing left to rebuild, I said. She nodded. I know. She turned from the porch. I hope your new life brings you peace. You deserve it, Adrian. It does, I replied, and went inside, closing the door. There'd be no grand reconciliation, no more drama. The tape didn't just expose Alina's lie. It exposed the doubt that had always existed between us. I thought she'd disappear, but she stayed in town, not with me. She rented a room, volunteered at the clinic, helped after storms, tutored kids. I didn't look for her, but I saw how she moved, quiet, careful, as if trying not to disturb the world I'd built. Locals asked if I minded her presence. She's just here, I'd say. That was enough. At the farmer's market, I saw her one day, laughing with an old woman. When she noticed me, she just nodded, and I nodded back. That was our new language, simple recognition, not friendship. Months passed. She earned her place in town as I had. People focused on my work, not my past. Business grew. I spoke at the college about digital resilience. I never told my story, but every lesson came from it. Sometimes I wondered if she'd have come back without Alina's confession. The answer was always no. Her return was fallout, not faith. I could forgive her for being human, but I couldn't forget she'd believed a lie over the man who loved her. One evening, as the sky turned violet, she sat beside me on a bench outside my shop. I'm not trying to win you back, she said. I know. I just wanted to thank you for letting me exist here, without dragging your story with me. I kept quiet for peace, not for you, I said. She nodded. The day it all happened, what were you going to say? I was going to ask what was going on. I thought it was a joke. She looked away, ashamed. You let it happen, I said. Now you live with it. I do, she whispered. She stood. This will be the last time. I'll respect your space. As she left, I called, You're doing good work. She smiled and vanished into the evening. Closure, I realized, isn't found in big speeches. Sometimes, it's just knowing you don't have to try anymore. Part 5. All I ever wanted was for the truth to live, so I let it. One gray Tuesday, fog wrapped the docks and I sat at my desk, half watching the world outside, half scrolling a forum on business security. A story caught my eye. False accusation ruins man's life until truth surfaces. I clicked, expecting nothing, but it was my story. No names, no photos, just a frighteningly accurate tale. A man accused by his sister-in-law, betrayed, beaten, vanished, then quietly redeemed when the truth came out. At the bottom, an audio file, Alina's voice, her full confession. Word for word, the same file I'd kept hidden for years. I hadn't posted it. Tessa must have, after I handed her the original. Maybe it was her way of setting things right, or maybe she just couldn't carry the weight alone. It spread fast. Blogs, forums, everywhere. Some doubted it, but the audio was real, and soon people pieced things together. This time, the whispers didn't chase me, they circled the people who'd once buried me. Alina lost her job and disappeared online. Jared, exposed by old footage, resigned from his coaching job. Eloise, who'd called me a wolf, was forced to step down from the charity board. There was no court, but the truth did its work. I stayed silent, didn't confirm or deny. I just kept living. Around town, people looked at me differently, not with pity, but respect. A guy at the marina said, if that story's true, I'm sorry for what you went through. That was enough. A woman at the cafe gave me a coffee on the house. Life wasn't transformed overnight, but it finally felt lighter. Tessa never spoke to me during all this, but I'd see her at the clinic, working hard, quiet. She'd set the truth free and then stood in the aftermath, not asking for sympathy. I respected that. One day, a letter arrived, no return address, just typed words. You let the truth breathe instead of using it as a weapon. I don't deserve your kindness, but thank you for not destroying us. I saved it, not because I needed it, but to remember justice isn't always loud. Sometimes it's a quiet, undeniable fact that makes people see themselves clearly at last. Once, a teenager walked into my shop and asked if I was the man from the story. He showed me a drawing, a faceless man standing firm in a storm. The caption, "Truth doesn't flinch." I shook his hand and told him, "Hold on to that strength." Healing didn't arrive with applause. It came in everyday things, walking into town, sharing a coffee, working quietly. I became deliberate with my time, with my trust, with my silence. Sometimes I'd see Tessa through the clinic window. We'd nod, nothing more. She never crossed that line again, and I respected her for it. Alina moved away. Jared and Eloise faded from town. I stayed, and I built. My business grew. I owned 3 buildings, taught at local schools, hired people, lived a life shaped by what I survived, not what others did to me. These days, peace means not needing to be seen or believed by everyone. It's the quiet that follows a storm. Tessa once asked if we could ever go back. If she asked again, I'd say the man she once knew is gone. I built a new story. Survival wasn't the end, it was the beginning. My name is Adrian Miles. I was erased, but I chose who to become, and this time, the only name I answered to is my own.